Dragons, I'm back to do the first half of my July reading wrap up. I always say July is like my favorite month because it's my only real month that I'm off the full month. I will be honest, this month has been a bit complicated. There's been a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, but hopefully second half of July will be a bit easier reading wise. But I was still able to read 7 things, which I'm super excited about. I was able to tackle some arcs that I got from ALA, and just stats because I'm a stat girl. I have read 7 things so far. I've read 2,194 pages. I read on average 70 pages a day. My average page count was 313. My most read drama was romance because I had quite a few audiobooks that I did include in this. I read 5 with rep, 2 from authors I read before. I read 3 5-stars and 4 4-stars, and I think that's it. I had no other ratings. For an average rating of 4.43, which is pretty good. I read 4 new releases, 1 backlist and 2 from last year. I read 5 physical, 2 audiobooks, and none other. I started 3 series, I continued 1, I completed 1, I caught up at 1, and I read 1 standalone. And I read 3 arcs, 1 from Audible, 0 from KU, 1 from the library, and 2 owned. And I read 1 middle grade, I read 1 fantasy, 2 romance, 1 YA fantasy, 1 horror book, and 1 middle grade fantasy. And that is all of my stats. So now we're going to get into the actual books that I read. And yeah, I'm excited to share them with you. So yeah, the first book that I read was an arc that I got from ALA. It is The Apartment House of Poppy Hill by Nina LaCour. I really like this book. It gave me Van Beekers of 144th Street vibe, but just was like very like fun. It also was very diverse and has some diversity tossed in, but you basically follow this main character named Poppy who has 2 moms, and this new couple is moving into her apartment building and she's kind of giving them the tour of it. It does give me House like the Van Beekers because that was like the premise of the first book where she's trying to like, and then there's like a mysterious people that live upstairs, and it's very, very cute. It has illustrations as well. I think it's a great starting read. And the chapters are super short and I just liked it. That was very, very cute. Nina LaCour did a really, really good job. I wouldn't mind reading more by this author in the future, and I just thought it was great. It just was it was like a fun, warm read. I think it was a bit short for me, and I didn't really dive into the characters that much. Even Poppy felt a little bit one-dimensional, but I enjoyed it and think you should definitely put it on yourself if you're a librarian. And the next book I read was not a planned read this month, I'll be very, very honest. But when I saw that Nicola Coughlan finally is going to do it in the do the audiobook, I decided to pick up Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. And I have to admit, I went into this book with a totally different premise that happened like twice this month, and I think it hindered my enjoyment just a tad. I was under the impression that this book took place like in ancient Egypt, like not ancient Egyptian, like ancient Elizabethan times, and about these witches that was a protector to the queen. It's not what this book is about, like, at all. So I think my understanding of the concept was a bit different, and I think that's why I struggled with it like just a little bit, but I still really enjoyed it. I still gave it 4 stars. It does deal with a lot of complicated issues, but basically you follow these 4 main characters who used to be a part of Her Majesty's Royal Coven, which is a group of witches that kind of protects the world. They all live very, very different lives, and then there's a prophecy that's stated that the next coming, or the next big evil is going to be this person. But it's when revealed that that character is not what anyone thinks she is, or who she thinks she is. It's a very, very interesting dynamic. It does deal a lot with like trans rights and like what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man, and I love that. I thought it was a very, very complicated topic, very, very compelling. The characters were really, really different, and I enjoyed it. I don't think I went in like a little bit with like mixed up expectations, but it was a solid read and a very, very quick read. I like the whip trip. I would definitely say this is more like paranormal, not a fantastical world. They are witches, but their witches are more like if you read something like Charmed, but it doesn't really have supernatural baddies. It's more like personal baddies. I liked it. I gave it 4 stars, and I definitely want to pick up book 2. I actually got the physical copy, and then I saw that Nicola Coughlan was doing it, but I wound up giving it 4 stars, and I enjoyed it. So I was happy that I picked it up, and I'm excited to keep reading that series. It just was not what I was expected going into it, so that is my thoughts on that. And then I wound up finishing The Last Fallen Realm by Gracie Kim. This is the final book in the Gifted Clan series. I love this book. I gave it 5 stars. I went into this book thinking I knew how it was going to wind up, but it was a very compelling read. This is the 3rd book in the series by Korean Richards. Korean witches, and I definitely love this series overall. I think book 2 suffered a little bit for me because the dynamics were a bit different, but this book really wrapped up the story in an effective way, and I just enjoyed it. It is a bit of a heartbreaker, I'll be honest. I got to the end and I was like near tears because I really do like these characters. I want to see what Gracie Kim's working on next because the series was so good. And it's one of those series that I think Rick Riordan did such a good job bringing it to the world and letting this thing get written because I loved it. I love the side characters. This book, you were back in the human world, so you got to see all the side characters again. The ending was really, really heartbreaking, but I'm hopeful that we might see these characters again. And yeah, but I really liked it. I gave it 5 stars, and I definitely recommend if you're looking to pick up a new middle grade series, you pick up this one. The first book is The Last Fallen Star, but I really like this and gave it 4 stars. Oh no, 5 stars. Really, really good. Definitely one of my favorite books of the year so far. And then I was doing Margaret's The Word Nerd Mid-Year Scramble, and I had to pick up like a short book for one of my prompts, and I remember Peace Love Books Jess mentioned Call Me Maybe by Cara Bastone, so I picked that up. Here's a photo. That book I gave like 4 stars. I thought it was a great audiobook. If I'm just rating the audiobook elements, I would have given that book 5 stars because I really, really enjoyed it. But it was a very, very cute story. It's about these 2 characters that kind of on this psychology project together where they have to kind of like dissect how people fall in love, and they're kind of team up, and you have a person who's very convinced that love is real and one that's not, and they kind of like team up, and it's like a full cast narration, which is definitely my favorite audiobook to read, and I loved it. I could not stop reading. It was like 4 hours. I remember just wanting to keep on reading. I felt like I was listening to a movie. It was great. I gave it 4 stars for review. I would definitely read more by this author in the future. I know she has another name that she writes under and I just cannot remember it, but I would definitely pick up the other ones in Audible sales in the future because I really did enjoy them, and I gave that one 4 stars. If you're looking for a very, very nice full cast audio, I would pick that one up. And definitely like a fun romance, which I have not read before. And then the next audiobook I picked up was In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. I will attach a photo here, and this one I gave 4.5 stars to. That I've heard everyone talking about. It is book 2 in the Love Light Farm series. I'm saving Love Light Farms for the winter because it's set on a Christmas tree farm, and I like to read my books seasonally, but I really, really like this one. I'm always looking for books that kind of have like a Gilmore Girls vibe, and this I felt like had it. So basically you follow Beckett, who works at a farm, and he's a bit grumpy, and then you follow the main heroine, who was the influencer in book 1 that got the Christmas tree farm on the map, and they kind of meet, and they kind of, you know, maybe have something going on. There was animals in the story. It was small town vibes. You got to see all the side characters. I was really, really invested in the story, and I gave it 4.5 stars. I really, really loved it. I loved the dynamics. As someone that does like do content creation, I felt like the main character was very, very realistic, and I just enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars, and now I'm reading Mixed Signals, which is the 3rd book in that series, but definitely go check it out. If you're looking for something that has Gilmore Girl vibes, I think B.K. Borison might be the author for you. And then the next book I picked up was because I'm on a blog tour, and that is because House of Roots and Ruin by Erin A. Craig. This is the sequel to A House of Salt and Sorrow, and I remember reading House of Salt and Sorrow and enjoying it. It wasn't my favorite book of my life, but I remembered enjoying it. But this book I loved. I think the main character works so much more for me, but you basically follow Verity, who is the youngest daughter in that family, and a secret about her is revealed in the first 100 pages of this book, where she could see ghosts, and she kind of gets sent away as a painter to go work in this house, to be married off to someone, and things kind of go from there. And I love this book. It was so atmospheric. It was so creepy. The romance was definitely what I wanted. I remember I got to like, there's also disability rep in here as well. The main character, one of the male love interest, is in a wheelchair. And it is a retelling of something, but I don't want to tell you what the retelling is because I think you should go into it not knowing, because it wasn't picked anywhere. It wasn't pitched anywhere like that. But I really, really liked it. If you liked House of Salt and Sorrow and felt a little bit disconnected from the characters, this might be a good book to pick up because I loved Verity and I loved the romance in this, and it didn't feel as disconnected. It also was a more insular story. There were like not as many characters. I still would love them to put a family tree in here, but I loved it. I think we're definitely gonna get a sequel or another companion book, but I really, really enjoyed it, and I gave it 5 stars. And then the last book I'm going to chat about in this reading, or this wrap up, is Where He Can't Find You by Darcy Coates. This is another ARC that I got from ALA. It comes out in November. This is my first ever horror book that I read, and I'm impressed. I'm impressed. Like, I went in kind of not expecting much, but I wound up giving it 4 stars. So this follows a couple of characters named Abby, and she lives in a small town where people keep going missing. This book, the plot of this book reminded me a lot of the Buffy episode where Willow kind of got taken by the skin creature in season 7, and I just liked it. There was these characters that were kind of forced to work together. There was a new girl that came to town. It was horror, but horror that I liked. It was very, very atmospheric horror. There was a creature. It felt like I was reading a episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and basically the main character, Abby's sister, gets taken by this creature, and they have to kind of figure out what happened, and they kind of go on an adventure to kind of save the day. There's police involved. There's also drawings in it. Again, this is ARC, so I'm sure that they'll be better as the final book comes, but I really enjoyed it. I love Darcy Coates' writing style, and I don't love horror, so I definitely am interested, and I'm actually reading another book by her currently, but I wound up giving this 4 stars and think that you should definitely check it out, especially if you're not a big horror fan. This is her YA debut. I don't think it's actually her YA debut, but I think it's her YA debut that's like being published by a traditional publisher. But I loved it, and I'm really excited that I picked it up. If I had to pick my favorite books of the month, I think physically I would probably say House of Roots and Ruin and The Last Fallen Realm. And if I had to pick my favorite audiobook, I think I would probably say In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. Thank you guys for watching. Tell me in the comments what is one book you read recently that you really loved. I would love to know it. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.